At the end of a desolate road sits an abandoned house, its once grand facade now marred by neglect. Boarded up windows and peeling paint tell the tale of years gone by, while dead trees loom overhead, casting ominous shadows upon the overgrown lawn. A narrow path winds its way through the dense forest, the branches overhead blocking out the moonlight and shrouding the surroundings in darkness. Roots protrude from the ground like gnarled fingers, creating trip hazards for any who dare to tread upon the shadowed path. In the heart of the forest lies a moonlit clearing, the soft light casting eerie shadows upon the ground. A sense of unease hangs heavy in the air, as if unseen eyes are watching from the darkness beyond. A derelict bridge spans a chasm, its rusted metal rails barely holding together against the ravages of time. The river below churns with a menacing intensity, its dark waters reflecting the moon's ghostly glow like a mirror into the abyss. Deep within the forest lies a forgotten cemetery, its tombstones weathered and worn with age. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, shrouding the graves in an otherworldly haze that seems to whisper secrets of the past. At the edge of the clearing stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and ivy that seem to writhe and twist in the moonlight. The darkness within seems to swallow all light, drawing the eye into its mysterious depths with an irresistible pull. Twisted trees loom overhead, their gnarled branches reaching out like grasping hands eager to ensnare the unwary. Shadows dance among the tangled foliage, casting strange shapes upon the forest floor and adding to the sense of foreboding that permeates the air. Sinister shadows stretch across the forest floor, their shifting forms creating an eerie tableau that seems to come alive in the darkness. The air is thick with the sound of whispered secrets, as if the very darkness itself is alive with malevolent intent. Deep within the forest lies a haunted glade, its twisted beauty a stark contrast to the surrounding darkness. Strange symbols adorn the trees, their meaning lost to time and their presence adding to the sense of unease that permeates the air. As the first light of dawn breaks through the darkness, the forest is bathed in a warm glow that banishes the shadows and brings hope to the land. Birds sing in the trees, their joyful chorus heralding the arrival of a new day and chasing away the lingering echoes of the night. As the sun sets, casting a crimson glow over the horizon, an imposing mansion stands silent and forsaken. Its once grand facade now weathered and covered in ivy, the mansion casts eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn, hinting at the secrets it holds within. In the neglected garden surrounding the mansion, tangled bushes and wilted flowers paint a haunting picture. Moonlight filters through the twisted branches of the trees, casting an ethereal glow upon patches of the eerie landscape, where shadows seem to dance in silent reverie. On the grand front porch of the mansion, once a beacon of opulence, now lies cracked and crumbling under the weight of time. Moonlight casts long shadows across the faded steps, adding to the sense of abandonment that permeates the air. Within the mansion's foyer, the dim light of dusty chandeliers flickers weakly, casting eerie shadows upon the tattered wallpaper. Moonlight filters through broken windows, illuminating cobweb-covered furniture that sits frozen in time, a silent witness to the mansion's descent into decay. In the cavernous ballroom of the mansion, the once glamorous dance floor now rots beneath neglect. Faded tapestries hang from the walls like forgotten memories, while moonlight streams through cracked skylights, casting ghostly patterns upon the abandoned space, as if the echoes of bygone celebrations still linger in the air. Within the mansion's library, the scent of dust hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the musty aroma of aging books. Tattered armchairs sit among shelves of ancient tomes, while moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of forgotten knowledge. In the dilapidated dining hall of the mansion, a long table lies buried beneath layers of cobwebs and neglect. Overturned chairs litter the floor, while moonlight streams through broken windows, casting an ethereal glow upon the decaying scene, where echoes of feasts long past still resonate in the silent air. Within the mansion's study, dusty bookshelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge, while forgotten artifacts gather dust in every corner. Moonlight filters weakly through dusty windows, casting long shadows upon the stacks of papers and abandoned furniture that clutter the room, where the ghosts of scholarly pursuits still linger in the darkness. In a desolate bedroom of the mansion, the once grand bed frame now sags under the weight of time, its faded curtains hanging limply from rusted rods. Moonlight filters weakly through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling walls, where whispers of dreams long forgotten still echo in the silent night. As dawn breaks over this mansion's overgrown backyard, the soft light of morning bathes the decaying structures in an ethereal glow. Mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the forgotten corners of the estate in a veil of mystery, where the spirits of the past find solace in the dawn of a new day. A car rumbles down a winding road, disappearing into the dense forest. Inside, a group of friends chats nervously, excitement tinged with apprehension evident in their voices. They've heard the stories about Willow Grove, an abandoned village rumored to be haunted, but they've come seeking adventure. As they approach the outskirts of the village, a shroud of mist descends, cloaking the world in an eerie haze. The friends step out of the car and into Willow Grove, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The village appears frozen in time, its buildings crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Windows are shattered, doors hang off their hinges, and the air is heavy with the scent of decay. Despite the desolation, a sense of unease settles over the group as they venture further into the heart of the village. At the edge of the village stands a grand mansion, a relic of a bygone era, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade crumbling. The friends exchange nervous glances as they approach, their curiosity outweighing their fear. With trembling hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the friends explore the mansion, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the friends uncover clues about the mansion's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the mansion comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The friends huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends make a final stand against the evil that haunts the mansion. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls, knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the mansion falls silent once more. The friends emerge from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. Elmwood Manor stood alone, surrounded by tall dead trees. Its windows were dark, and the setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn. The sky was a deep orange, adding to the sinister atmosphere. Inside the manor, the foyer was grand but neglected. Dust and cobwebs covered everything, including the old chandelier that hung from the ceiling. A grand staircase led to the upper floors, and debris littered the floor. The living room had a cold fireplace, a dusty rug, and furniture covered in white sheets. Broken windows let in faint light, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. The dining room featured a long table covered in a dusty cloth. Chairs were overturned, and cobwebs hung from the chandelier above. The windows were boarded up, making the room feel even more claustrophobic. The kitchen was cluttered with old rusty pots and broken cabinets. An old wooden table sat in the center, covered in dust and cobwebs, adding to the room's decrepit state. The library was filled with old dusty books and cobwebs. A large ornate mirror hung on one wall, and a single candle flickered on a desk, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to move on their own. The bedroom featured a large canopy bed covered in dust. The cracked windows let in moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper. An old wardrobe stood open and empty, adding to the room's eerie stillness. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The atmosphere was oppressive and filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. A hidden room in the basement was filled with strange artifacts and old books. A large cracked mirror reflected a distorted image, and a single candle flickered on a desk, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift and move. As dawn broke, Elmwood Manor was bathed in soft, golden light. The shadows receded, but the mansion still looked eerie and abandoned. Birds began to sing, but the air remained heavy with the terror of the night. The haunting was over, but the memories lingered, a testament to the mansion's dark past.
Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits Blackwood Manor from her estranged grandmother. The manor is located on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Emma decides to move in, hoping the isolation will inspire her writing. As she arrives, she feels an eerie chill. The mansion, with its tall spires and ivy-covered walls, seems to loom over her ominously. Despite her unease, Emma is determined to make this her new home. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, her mind racing with unease and exhaustion. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the attic. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her grandmother and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's grandmother. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Blackwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
Lily received a mysterious letter inviting her to an old mansion that once belonged to her ancestors. She had always been curious about her family's past and decided to visit. The mansion was isolated, surrounded by overgrown trees and an eerie silence. As she walked towards the door, the sky turned gray and the wind began to howl. Lily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the corners. An old chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Lily stepped into the grand hall, where portraits of stern-looking ancestors lined the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine as she heard faint whispering. The room was dimly lit by the light filtering through the grimy windows. Lily found herself in the mansion's library, filled with dusty books and old furniture. An old leather-bound book lay open on a desk. As she approached, she saw it was a diary detailing strange rituals and mysterious disappearances. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Lily discovered a secret door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated but then pushed it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. With her flashlight in hand, she began to descend, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was even colder, with strange symbols painted on the walls and an old wooden table in the center. On the table were ancient artifacts and melted candles. Lily felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She heard whispers growing louder, almost as if they were coming from the walls themselves. Lily's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as the whispers turned into screams. She fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When she did, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the table, staring at her with hollow eyes. She backed away in terror. Desperate to escape, Lily turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Lily glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return. In a small town nestled among the hills, a group of friends receives an invitation to spend a weekend at a secluded manor on the outskirts of town. Excited for a getaway, they eagerly accept, unaware of the darkness that lurks within the old estate. As they approach the imposing gates of the manor, a sense of unease washes over them, but they dismiss it as mere nerves. The friends enter the grand foyer of the manor, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Dust covers every surface, and cobwebs hang from the chandeliers overhead. Despite its faded grandeur, the manor exudes an air of mystery and intrigue. They exchange nervous glances, wondering what secrets lie hidden within its walls. As night falls, the friends gather for a dinner party in the grand dining hall. The table is set with fine china and silverware, but the food sits untouched, as if waiting for guests who will never arrive. As they dine, they can't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange noises echo through the empty halls. As the night wears on, the friends split up to explore the manor, each one drawn to a different part of the house by an unseen force. They wander the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Strange whispers fill the air, their words indistinct but undeniably menacing. As they explore, one of the friends encounters a ghostly apparition. A woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading down her back in loose waves. She reaches out to them with ethereal hands, her eyes filled with longing and sadness. The friend staggers back in terror, their heart pounding in their chest. As the night progresses, the friends uncover dark secrets hidden within the manor's walls, a history of tragedy and betrayal that spans generations. They find old journals and letters, piecing together the story of the manor's past inhabitants. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night wears on, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent forces that haunt the manor. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the manor if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the manor once and for all. They gather in the grand foyer, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the friends emerge from the manor, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. On a stormy night, 4 friends, Emma, Jake, Sophie, and Liam, arrive at Ravenswood Manor, an abandoned house said to be haunted. The wind howls and lightning illuminates the decaying facade. Jake, the adventurous one, suggests they spend the night there. Despite their fear, they all agree and push open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The foyer is dark and smells of mold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and broken furniture lies scattered around. Their flashlights reveal faded portraits on the walls, eyes seemingly following them. The door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Emma notices a music box on the mantel. She opens it, and it starts playing a haunting melody. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past them, and the room feels alive. A shadow moves across the room, and Sophie screams. They shine their flashlights in the direction of the movement, but see nothing. Jake insists it was just a trick of the light, but the others aren't so sure. They decide to stick together as they continue exploring. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes. The air is colder here, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Liam opens a cupboard, and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at him. He yells and slams the door shut, his heart racing. They find a door leading to the basement. Jake suggests they go down, but Emma hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange markings on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board on it. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see red eyes staring at them from the darkness. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs. They race towards the front door, but it won't budge. Ghostly wails echo through the house, and the walls seem to close in on them. Jake finds a side window and breaks it with a chair. One by one, they crawl through, escaping into the stormy night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the wet grass, gasping for breath. The manor looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The storm begins to calm, but the memory of what they saw remains vivid. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night stay with them, a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed.
In a quaint lakeside town, Sarah and Chris arrive at a secluded cabin for a weekend getaway. The air is crisp, and the lake shimmers in the sunlight. Excited for a peaceful retreat, they unload their bags and set foot into the cabin. As Sarah and Chris settle into the cabin, they notice strange occurrences, a flickering light, doors creaking on their own. Sarah brushes it off as quirks of an old cabin, but Chris grows increasingly uneasy. Something feels off about the place. Curiosity gets the best of them, and Sarah and Chris decide to explore the surrounding woods. The trees seem to whisper secrets as they wander deeper into the forest. The atmosphere grows thick with tension, and Sarah can't shake the feeling they're being watched. Lost in the woods, Sarah and Chris stumble upon an abandoned shack. It's dilapidated, covered in moss and ivy. Despite Chris's protests, Sarah insists on investigating. Inside, they find cryptic symbols scrawled on the walls. As night falls, Sarah is plagued by vivid nightmares, a ghostly figure beckoning from the darkness, whispering cryptic warnings. She wakes in a cold sweat, shaken to her core. Chris tries to comfort her, but the feeling of dread lingers. Desperate for answers, Sarah and Chris return to the lake. The water is still and murky, reflecting the night sky like a black mirror. Sarah feels a chill run down her spine as she stares into its depths, sensing an ancient presence lurking beneath the surface. In a moment of recklessness, Sarah decides to confront the entity haunting them. She ventures into the woods alone, following the whispers that lead her deeper into the darkness. Chris follows, desperate to protect her from whatever lurks within. In the heart of the forest, Sarah and Chris come face to face with the source of the haunting, a restless spirit trapped in Willow Lake for centuries. It pleads for release, its voice echoing through the trees. Sarah and Chris realize they must help the spirit find peace before it's too late. With a heavy heart, Sarah and Chris perform a ritual to release the spirit from its earthly bonds. The air crackles with magic as they recite ancient incantations, channeling their energy into the lake. As the last words are spoken, a blinding light fills the forest, and the spirit ascends, finally finding peace. As dawn breaks over Willow Lake, Sarah and Chris emerge from the forest, weary but victorious. The haunted whispers have faded, replaced by the soothing sounds of nature. They share a knowing glance, grateful for the bond that brought them through the darkness. On a dark, stormy night, 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emma, stood at the gates of Blackwood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture covered in white sheets and cobwebs in every corner made the place look abandoned and eerie. In the living room, they saw a grand piano in the corner and a large broken chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump in fright. They decided to explore the upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint whispering. They opened one door and found a room filled with old, dusty toys. The air was freezing, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving by itself. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, broken furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She stared at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying, and agreed to never speak of it again.
On a chilly autumn evening, 4 friends, Emily, Jack, Olivia, and Michael, gather around a campfire near Willow Creek. They share ghost stories and dare each other to spend the night at the old abandoned house on the hill. Despite their fear, curiosity wins and they decide to go. The friends arrive at the old house, its silhouette looming against the night sky. The house is in disrepair, with broken windows and ivy creeping up the walls. Jack pushes open the rusty gate, and they walk up the overgrown path to the front door, which creaks loudly as they enter. Inside, the house is dark and cold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust covers the furniture. They switch on their flashlights, revealing faded wallpaper and broken picture frames. As they step further inside, the front door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where an old grand piano sits covered in dust. Emily notices a family portrait on the wall, the face is scratched out. Suddenly, the piano keys play a haunting tune on their own. The friends back away, their hearts pounding. They move to the kitchen, where rusted appliances and broken dishes are scattered. The air is colder here. Olivia opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. The friends huddle together, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. Michael suggests going down, but Emily hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced.
In a remote forest clearing stands an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and its door barely hanging on its hinges. Four friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at the cabin for a weekend getaway. The sun is setting, casting long shadows over the eerie landscape. Inside the cabin, the air is thick with dust and decay. Cobwebs hang from the rafters, and the floorboards creak ominously underfoot. The friends explore cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they navigate the dimly lit rooms. As they search the cabin, they discover a trapdoor leading to a dark, musty basement. With trepidation, they descend into the depths below, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and the sound of dripping water echoes off the stone walls. In the basement, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo off the stone walls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the darkness, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the basement with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the basement, their hearts pounding with terror. They scramble up the stairs, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they race for the safety of the cabin above. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the floor, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. Outside, the moon casts an eerie glow over the forest, as if mourning the events that have unfolded. On a foggy night, four friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood outside the iron gates of Redwood Manor. The mansion was infamous for being haunted, and they had decided to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old portraits watched them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, making them all jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Redwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.
Lucy and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian-style house they bought at a bargain price. The house is large and filled with antique furniture. As they unpack, Lucy finds a covered portrait in the attic. She pulls off the cloth, revealing a beautiful woman with haunting eyes. She decides to hang it in the living room. That night, Lucy wakes up to strange noises, soft whispers and the sound of footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks at the portrait, the eyes seem to follow her. She feels a chill but convinces herself it's just her imagination. The next day, Lucy hears whispers coming from the living room. She finds Mark staring at the portrait, mesmerized. When she touches his shoulder, he snaps out of it, claiming he heard the woman in the portrait whispering his name. Lucy starts to feel uneasy about the painting. Determined to understand the painting's origins, Lucy visits the local library. She discovers that the woman in the portrait is Isabella, a former owner of the house who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It's rumored that her spirit haunts the house. That night, the whispers grow louder, and Lucy sees a shadowy figure moving through the house. The air grows cold, and the portrait seems to come alive, the woman's expression changing to one of anger. Lucy feels a strong, malevolent presence. Lucy and Mark contact a paranormal investigator. The investigator explains that Isabella's spirit is trapped and angry. He suggests they find something that belonged to Isabella and use it to perform a ritual to release her spirit. Lucy searches the attic and finds an old diary belonging to Isabella. The diary details her life and the love she lost. It also mentions a locket that she cherished. Lucy finds the locket hidden in a secret compartment in the attic. Lucy and Mark, guided by the paranormal investigator, perform the ritual using the locket. As they chant, the house shakes, and Isabella's ghostly figure appears. She looks sad but grateful. She reaches out, touches the locket, and then fades away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Isabella's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Lucy and Mark decide to stay and cherish the history of the house. They hang the locket in a special place to remember Isabella. Months later, Lucy and Mark enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Isabella and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The house is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way.
Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return.
Ravenswood Mansion loomed on the hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Its windows were dark, and the setting sun painted the sky with deep orange hues, casting eerie shadows across the land. Inside, the mansion's foyer was grand but covered in dust. A large, winding staircase led to the upper floors. An old chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals dull and dusty, hinting at the mansion's forgotten grandeur. The living room had a large fireplace with cold ashes, a dusty rug, and old furniture covered in white sheets. Faint light filtered through the broken windows, casting long shadows on the walls. The kitchen was in disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. A large wooden table sat in the center, covered in cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect. The dining room featured a long table with a dusty tablecloth and overturned chairs. The windows were boarded up, and the room was dimly lit by a single candle, casting flickering shadows on the walls. A grand staircase wound upward into darkness. The steps creaked underfoot, and the banister was thick with dust. A faint, eerie light glowed at the top of the stairs, beckoning yet foreboding. The master bedroom featured a large canopy bed covered in dust and cobwebs. The cracked windows allowed moonlight to filter through, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and adding to the room's eerie atmosphere. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable. A hidden room in the basement was filled with old books and strange artifacts. A large cracked mirror reflected a distorted image, and a single candle flickered on a dusty desk, casting unsettling shadows. As dawn broke, Ravenswood Mansion was bathed in soft, golden light. The shadows receded, but the mansion still looked eerie and abandoned. Birds began to sing, but the air was still heavy with the night's terrors.
The camera pans over a serene lake surrounded by towering trees. The water reflects the golden hues of the setting sun, creating a picturesque scene. But beneath the tranquil surface lies a sinister secret waiting to be uncovered. A group of friends arrives at a lakeside cabin for a weekend getaway. They laugh and joke as they unpack their bags, eager to unwind and enjoy the beauty of nature. As night falls, one of the friends, Emma, shares a local legend about the lake. A tale of a vengeful spirit haunting its waters, seeking revenge on anyone who dares to disturb its slumber. The group dismisses the legend as mere superstition. Strange occurrences plague the cabin, whispers in the night, unexplained shadows flickering in the corners, and cold drafts chilling the air. The friends brush off their unease, attributing it to the eerie atmosphere of the lake. Exploring the cabin, one of the friends, Jack, finds an old journal hidden beneath the floorboards. Its pages reveal the tragic history of the lake, a tale of betrayal and murder that has haunted its shores for centuries. The vengeful spirit of the lake manifests, its ghostly form stalking the friends with malicious intent. Terror grips their hearts as they realize they are being hunted by a force beyond their understanding. In a desperate bid for survival, the friends confront the vengeful spirit at the water's edge. Armed with courage and determination, they must uncover the truth behind the spirit's rage to break the curse that binds them. Through bravery and sacrifice, the friends uncover the truth behind the spirit's curse and lay it to rest. As dawn breaks, they emerge from the darkness, forever changed by their harrowing ordeal.
Maya received an old handwritten letter inviting her to Ravenwood Manor, a house she had never heard of. The letter was signed by her late grandmother, whom she had never met. Intrigued and seeking answers about her family's past, she decided to visit the manor. As she arrived, the sky was overcast, and the manor stood tall and imposing against the gloomy backdrop. Maya pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly in protest. The air inside was stale, and the grand entrance hall was shrouded in shadows. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the corners. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Maya found her way to the dining room, where a long table was set as if for a grand feast, though everything was covered in dust. Tall candles stood unlit, and an old chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. In the hallway, Maya stopped in front of a large portrait of a stern-looking woman. The plaque read, "Eliza Ravenwood, 1887. The woman's eyes seemed to follow Maya as she moved. She felt a sudden chill and a sense of being watched. A cold breeze brushed past her, causing her to shiver. Exploring further, Maya discovered a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed the shelf aside and found a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Taking a deep breath, she descended the stairs, her flashlight flickering. The air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Maya approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Maya's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled for her flashlight. When it flickered back on, she saw the ghostly figure of Eliza Ravenwood standing before her, eyes filled with malice. Maya stumbled back, tripping over a loose floorboard and landing hard. The diary she had found earlier slipped from her grasp, landing open on the floor. The pages detailed Eliza Ravenwood's descent into madness and dark rituals meant to bind her spirit to the house. Maya realized that Eliza's spirit was trying to protect a dark secret hidden within the manor. Determined to escape, Maya grabbed the diary and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows darting around her. She burst through the front door into the stormy night, her heart pounding. As she reached her car, she looked back at the manor and saw Eliza's ghostly figure watching her from an upstairs window. Emily, a young historian, inherited the sprawling and ancient Ravenwood Manor from her eccentric great-uncle. She, along with her friends Jack and Lucy, arrived on a cloudy afternoon. The mansion was nestled deep in the woods, its grandeur overshadowed by an eerie silence. "This place is massive," Jack remarked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "More like massively creepy," Lucy added, shivering as they crossed the threshold. Emily clutched the heavy iron key, a sense of foreboding settling in. "Let's explore and get settled in." Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dusty rooms, antique furniture, and forgotten relics. They marveled at the grand staircase, the chandeliers draped in cobwebs, and the eerie portraits of ancestors long gone. "This place must have so many stories," Emily said, running her fingers over an old book on a shelf. In the attic, they discovered a locked chest. After some effort, they managed to pry it open, revealing a collection of old diaries and a peculiar-looking amulet. "What's this?" Lucy asked, holding up the amulet. It glowed faintly in the dim light. That night, they settled into their rooms. The manor was deathly silent, save for the occasional creak of the wooden beams. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she drifted off to sleep, she was jolted awake by the sound of whispering voices. She sat up, heart pounding, and saw a shadow move across her room. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whispering ceased and the room fell silent once more. Emily lay back down, but sleep eluded her. The next day, Emily and her friends decided to delve into the diaries they found in the attic. The journals belonged to various members of the Ravenwood family, detailing strange occurrences and ghostly sightings over the centuries. "Listen to this," Emily said, reading aloud. "Great-Uncle Henry wrote about a family curse and mentions the amulet. It's supposed to protect the bearer from evil spirits." Jack frowned. "That explains the creepy vibes we've been getting." They continued reading, piecing together the dark history of the Ravenwood family and their connection to the supernatural. While exploring the basement, they found a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. The air was thick with a musty odor as they ventured inside, discovering an old ritual chamber filled with strange symbols and artifacts. "This must be where they conducted their rituals," Jack said, examining the symbols etched into the walls. Emily found a dusty book on a pedestal. "It's a book of spells and rituals. This might help us understand what's going on." As they examined the room, they heard a low growl emanating from the darkness. That night, the manor was alive with supernatural activity. Doors slammed, lights flickered, and ghostly apparitions roamed the hallways. The friends huddled together in the living room, fear gripping them. "We need to get out of here," Lucy said, her voice shaking. But as they tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was trapping them inside. "We're stuck," Jack said, panic in his eyes. "What do we do now?" Emily clutched the amulet. "We have to find a way to break the curse." In the library, Emily found the banishment ritual in the book they discovered. As she began to recite the incantation, the temperature dropped, and a dark, menacing figure appeared before them. "You cannot banish me," it hissed, its form shifting and flickering. Emily's voice wavered, but she continued the ritual. The figure screamed in rage, its form destabilizing. "Keep going, Emily," Jack urged. The figure lunged at them, but a bright light emanated from the amulet, pushing it back. Emily completed the ritual and the figure disintegrated into a cloud of dark mist. The manor fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. The ghostly apparitions vanished, and the friends breathed a sigh of relief. "We did it," Lucy said, tears of relief in her eyes. As they prepared to leave, they noticed a portrait of Great Uncle Henry smiling down at them. Emily felt a sense of closure, knowing they had freed the manor from its curse. "Let's get out of here," Jack said. They locked the manor and drove away, leaving the horrors of Ravenwood Manor behind. Back in their hometown, life slowly returned to normal. But Emily couldn't forget what happened. One night, she found the old amulet on her bedside table, even though she had left it at the manor. Her heart raced as she picked it up. The room grew cold, and she heard a familiar whisper. "Welcome back," a voice said behind her. Emily spun around to see the dark figure from the manor, its eyes glowing with malevolence. "You can never escape Ravenwood Manor," it said, reaching out for her. Emily screamed as the room plunged into darkness. Ravenwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure, dominates the landscape with its ominous presence. The setting sun bathes its darkened facade in a blood-red glow, as if warning all who dare approach of the secrets it holds within. The entrance to Ravenwood Manor is marked by ornate iron gates, their twisted designs speaking of a forgotten era. Vines snake their way around the cold metal, as if nature itself is reclaiming the estate from the hands of man. Within the sprawling grounds of Ravenwood Manor, darkness reigns supreme. Overgrown hedges and wilted flowers lend an air of neglect to the once grand estate. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows upon the unkempt landscape. In the backyard of Ravenwood Manor, twisted paths wind their way through a maze of gnarled trees. At the center stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and mystery, beckoning those brave enough to uncover its secrets. Adjacent to Ravenwood Manor lies an overgrown cemetery, its weathered tombstones peeking through the tangled undergrowth like silent sentinels of the past. Wisps of fog cling to the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the forgotten burial ground. Within the entrance hall of Ravenwood Manor, flickering candlelight casts long shadows upon the grand staircase. Tattered portraits line the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow every move of those who dare to enter. In the dining room of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for an abandoned feast, its once luxurious settings now covered in dust and cobwebs. The chandelier above hangs low, its light obscured by the thick layer of neglect that pervades the room. Within the library of Ravenwood Manor, dusty shelves stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of centuries of knowledge. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, the once grand canopy bed now sags under the weight of time, its tattered curtains billowing in the wind like ghosts of the past. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper, as if the very walls themselves are haunted by the memories of those who once slept within. As dawn breaks, the front steps of Ravenwood Manor are bathed in the soft light of. It was a cold, rainy evening when Emily received a letter from a law firm she had never heard of. Her great-uncle, a man she had never met, had passed away and left her his mansion, Blackwood Manor. Intrigued by the unexpected inheritance, Emily decided to visit the old house with her friends, Mark, Sophie, and Daniel. "I can't believe this place is mine," Emily said as they drove up the winding road to the mansion. Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a Gothic structure with ivy-covered walls and dark, empty windows that seemed to watch their every move. "Looks like something out of a horror movie," Daniel joked, though his eyes reflected a hint of fear. Inside, the mansion was even more imposing. High ceilings, dusty furniture, and cobwebs in every corner gave it an eerie atmosphere. They split up to explore, each drawn to different parts of the house. "Look at this place," Sophie said, her voice echoing in the grand foyer. "It's like stepping back in time." Emily found herself in the library, where she discovered old family portraits in a large leather-bound book on a pedestal. As she opened it, a chill ran down her spine. The book contained detailed accounts of strange rituals and ghostly sightings. "This is weird," she murmured, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread. That night, the friends settled into their rooms, The wind howled outside, and the mansion creaked with every gust. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she tried to sleep, she heard whispers and footsteps in the hallway. "Who's there?" she called out, but received no answer. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the foot of her bed. Emily screamed, waking everyone up. When they rushed into her room, the figure was gone. "It was right there," Emily insisted, trembling. "It was just a bad dream," Mark said, trying to comfort her, but his voice lacked conviction. The next day they decided to explore the basement, hoping to uncover the source of the strange occurrences. The basement was dark and musty, filled with old furniture and boxes. In the far corner they found a hidden door. "This place just gets creepier," Daniel said as they pried the door open. Inside was a small room filled with bizarre artifacts, jars with strange contents, ancient symbols carved into the walls, and a large, dusty mirror. "What the hell is all this?" Sophie asked, her voice shaking. "It looks like some kind of ritual room," Emily said, her unease growing. Emily felt drawn to the mirror. As she wiped away the dust, she saw not just her reflection, but another face behind her. An old woman with hollow eyes and a sinister smile. "Emily, step away from the mirror," Mark said, pulling her back. The reflection changed, showing horrific scenes of past inhabitants suffering. The room grew colder and the sense of dread intensified. "We need to get out of here," Daniel said urgently. But the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the ghostly face in the mirror started to chant. Trapped in the basement, the friends tried to find a way out. The ghostly presence grew stronger, manifesting in front of them. The old woman from the mirror appeared, her eyes filled with malice. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed. "This house is cursed." Objects began to fly around the room, and the friends huddled together, trying to protect themselves. Emily remembered the book she found in the library. "We need to perform a ritual to banish her," she shouted over the chaos. Emily and the others rushed back to the library to retrieve the book. As they read through the incantations, the mansion seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. "Hurry, Emily," Sophie urged. Emily recited the ritual, and the ghostly figure screamed in rage. The house shook violently, and the friends struggled to keep their balance. "By the power of light, we banish you," Emily shouted. A blinding light filled the room, and the ghost's scream reached a deafening pitch before she vanished, leaving the house silent once more. The mansion was eerily quiet after the ghost was banished. The friends cautiously explored, ensuring the spirit was truly gone. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the house seemed almost peaceful. "We did it," Daniel said, relieved. "But what now?" Sophie asked. "This place still feels wrong." "We should leave," Emily decided. "This house needs to be left alone." They packed their things and left Blackwood Manor, vowing to never return. As they drove away, Emily glanced back one last time. The mansion stood silently, its dark history buried once more. Back in their town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends tried to move on, but the memories of Blackwood Manor lingered. Emily kept the book hidden away, a reminder of the horrors they faced. One night, Emily heard a familiar whispering. She turned to see the old woman from the mirror standing at the foot of her bed. "Did you really think it was over?" the ghost whispered, her voice dripping with malice. Emily screamed, and the room went dark. The nightmare was far from over. On a cold, windy night, 4 friends, Anna, Tom, Lisa, and Mark, stand before the crumbling mansion on the outskirts of town. The mansion, long abandoned, is rumored to be haunted. Tom dares the group to spend the night inside. With nervous laughter, they agree, pushing open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The air is thick with dust and the scent of decay. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and old broken furniture is strewn about. They switch on their flashlights, illuminating the dark, gloomy hallway. They enter the living room, where a grand fireplace sits cold and empty. Faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors line the walls. Lisa notices a portrait with eyes that seem to follow them. She shivers but dismisses it as her imagination. A sudden thud echoes through the house. They freeze, listening. Mark suggests it's just the house settling, but Anna isn't so sure. They decide to check it out, moving cautiously towards the source of the noise. They find a hidden door behind a dusty curtain. It creaks open to reveal a small, cluttered room filled with old books and strange artifacts. A single candle flickers on a table, though no one has been here for years. As they examine the room, a ghostly figure appears, hovering near the candle. It's a woman in an old-fashioned dress, her eyes filled with sorrow. She reaches out to them, her mouth moving as if speaking, but no sound comes out. The friends back away in terror. Anna bravely steps forward, trying to communicate with the apparition. The ghost points to a diary on the table. Anna opens it and begins to read aloud. The diary reveals the tragic story of the woman who was wrongfully accused of witchcraft and died in the mansion. As Anna reads, the house begins to shake. Objects fly off the shelves, and the ghostly woman lets out a silent scream. The friends realize they need to leave immediately. They rush out of the room and down the hallway, the mansion seemingly coming alive around them. They burst through the front door and race to the gate. The mansion's windows rattle violently, and ghostly faces press against the glass. They don't stop until they are far away, the mansion still visible in the distance, now eerily silent. Back in the safety of their homes, the friends try to forget the night's events. But each night, they are haunted by the image of the ghostly woman and the sounds of the mansion. They realize the past isn't easily forgotten, and some echoes never fade. Blackwood Manor had always been a place of dark legends in the town of Ravenwood. On a foggy evening, Jack, a determined historian, arrived to uncover the truth about the mysterious disappearances linked to the mansion. He parked his car at the entrance, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. The fog rolled in thick waves, almost swallowing the mansion whole. Jack pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected foyer. His footsteps echoed ominously as he walked down the main hallway, the air thick with a sense of abandonment. As Jack explored, he felt a sudden chill. He turned and saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving him questioning his sanity. Determined, he continued to the library, where he hoped to find records about the mansion's dark past. In the library, Jack found rows of old, dusty books. As he searched through them, he heard whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Thomas Blackwood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse placed on the house. Jack's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular drew his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. He reached out, but the image disappeared. Jack discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books on a table. He found a journal detailing dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by its original owner, Thomas Blackwood. As Jack read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Thomas Blackwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Jack and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Jack knew he had to leave immediately. Jack bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Jack reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article revealing the dark history of Blackwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Thomas's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." He knew the haunting was far from over. In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols, and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over.
Emma, a writer in her early 30s, moves into an old Victorian house in Willow Creek. She hopes the secluded house will help her overcome her writer's block. As she steps into the house, the air feels heavy, and she hears faint whispers echoing through the empty rooms. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway, but when she checks, there's no one there. Her unease grows, but she convinces herself it's just the house settling. While exploring the attic, Emma finds an old diary belonging to a girl named Lily. The diary speaks of strange occurrences and a tragic story of how Lily disappeared without a trace. Emma feels a chill run down her spine as she reads the last unfinished entry. The following night, the whispers return, clearer and more urgent. Shadows flicker and move on their own. Emma sees a ghostly figure of a young girl in the hallway, who vanishes as soon as she approaches. Fear takes hold of her. Terrified, Emma reaches out to the town's historian, Mr. Thompson. He tells her about the legend of Lily, a girl who disappeared many years ago. The house has a history of hauntings, and no one has lived there for long. Emma realizes she must uncover the truth to find peace. Determined, Emma performs a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. As she calls out, the room grows cold, and the ghostly figure of Lily appears. Lily reveals she was murdered, and begs for Emma's help to find her remains and put her to rest. Following Lily's clues, Emma discovers a hidden cellar beneath the house. There she finds Lily's remains and a locket with her name. Emma feels a mix of horror and relief, knowing she can finally help Lily find peace. Emma arranges a proper burial for Lily. As she places the locket in Lily's grave, a sense of calm envelops the area. The whispers cease and the house feels lighter. Emma feels a deep sense of closure and knows she has done the right thing. With the haunting over, Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. The house no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's filled with a comforting, serene atmosphere. Emma sits by the window looking out at the sunny landscape, ready to start a new chapter in her life. Emma, a young woman in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Oakwood Manor from her estranged aunt. She decides to visit the house, hoping to sell it quickly. As she arrives, she feels an unsettling chill in the air. The house, surrounded by towering oak trees, looks like it hasn't been touched in decades. On her first night in the house, Emma explores the dusty, dimly lit rooms. She finds a family portrait with a stern-looking woman who resembles her aunt. As she prepares for bed, she hears strange noises, whispers and footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. The next day, Emma discovers a locked room at the end of the hallway. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key in a drawer. The key fits, and as she opens the door, she finds an old nursery filled with cobweb-covered toys and an old rocking chair that starts moving on its own. That night, Emma is awakened by a cold breeze and sees a ghostly figure of a child standing by her bed. The child whispers, "Help me." Terrified, Emma tries to communicate, but the figure vanishes. She realizes the house holds dark secrets that need to be uncovered. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma searches the house and finds a hidden diary in the nursery. The diary belonged to her aunt and reveals a tragic story about the death of a child named Lily, who was her aunt's daughter. The diary hints at dark rituals conducted to communicate with Lily's spirit. Emma decides to perform a seance to contact Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants the words from the diary. The room grows cold and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by her mother's rituals. Lily begs Emma to free her. Emma follows the diary's instructions to break the ritual. As she performs the final steps, the house shakes violently, and a dark shadow emerges, trying to stop her. Emma confronts the shadow, realizing it's her aunt's tormented spirit, refusing to let Lily go. With determination, Emma completes the ritual, and the shadow dissipates with a final, anguished scream. Lily's spirit is freed, and she smiles gratefully at Emma before disappearing into a bright light. The house grows calm and quiet. With the haunting over, Emma decides to stay at Oakwood Manor and turn it into a writer's retreat. She feels a deep connection to the house and its history. As she sits on the porch, the sun sets, casting a warm glow over the once haunted mansion.